like working with people and I like helping people, it was easy to want to spend more time interacting with people, getting this exchange of energy and ideas, and actually seeing the fruits of your labor kind of play out in front of you.
It's important to not only focus on the things that give them the weight loss, but giving them the resources and the mental strength to target all those other things.
Right. Not only just day to day, we're different from moment to moment. It's not just how you might feel physically, it's how you feel emotionally, how you feel spiritually, what's the quality of your life.
The last piece of the puzzle was to get them stronger than ever before, or more mobile or more flexible than ever before, so we can prevent it from coming back.
Wanting them to feel good when they've walked through the door. And everybody that walks out says, I feel a lot better leaving than I did when I was coming in. All we can do is make ourselves more robust so we can manage all of these different things that are going to be coming at us.
Welcome to the HealthFit Huddle, where we keep you mobile and active away from painkillers and surgery so you can get back to all the activities that you love. My name is Dr. Jason Hahn, CEO and co-founder of HealthFit Physical Therapy and Chiropractic. My special guest today is the one and only Coach Allister Buchanan, the one and only. Coach Allister and I have known each other for at least 10 years at this point, and he's been an integral part of this entire operation since its inception. So really happy to have him, and we're going to talk everything personal training, sports performance, and just movement. So happy to have you on the Huddle.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's get started.
Right.
Can you give the people that don't know you yet a little bit more about your background, how you grew up, even what kind of kid were you?
All right. Well, I'm originally from Toronto, and I moved to California roughly about, 21, 22 years ago. And I was actually a screenwriter.
Oh.
Right, I was trained.
I didn't know this. What?
I went to school for film, and I moved out here to screenwrite, to be a screenwriter. And I thought I'd fill a lot of my time with training because it was more flexible for me to write and to, well, as the time went on, I started to get a lot deeper into training, and then within a couple of years, I was training full time, and that became my passion, so to speak.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. Well,
So going back to when you were in Toronto, I always remember that one photo you showed me when you were stretching. You're in track and field.
Yeah, I was like 12 or 13 or something like that.
Tell me a little bit about your childhood and like what kind of sports and kind
So
of stuff
I grew up playing sports, primarily track and football and basketball. And what's interesting is because Toronto, Canada's it's a hockey place, right? So we would play out, with that like a lot. Do a lot of that because it's, we got like 4 months of winter, of summer, So I played football. I ran track. Track was actually my first love, more than football. I ended up, I guess, becoming more known for playing football later on, but I actually loved track. And it was one of those interviews that I'd done years ago, and they'd asked me about it, and I said, well, track is basically, it's individual. Your reliance on other people is minimal other than your coach. Everything that you do, you sort of have to do yourself. And I like that aspect of it, which as we get further on into the interview, it'll sort of roll over into being a trainer and then joining a part of a bigger team, how that sort of kind of plays into it too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We all know you as the energy, you always have a smile, your laugh. Were you that same as a kid?
Yeah, I think that ideally, clients, patients, they can feel if you're enjoying what you're doing. I guess in any industry, anything that you do, they can always feel if you're enjoying what you're doing, if you like being there with them or being in the moment. So I think naturally, because I like working with people and I like helping people, it was an easy transition for me to work with people and to have this energy, this exchange, and wanting them to feel good when they've walked through the door. And everybody that walks out says, I feel a lot better leaving than I did when I was coming in. Regardless of how they might necessarily have felt coming in, they said, I always feel a lot better leaving than I did coming in. So that's one of the things in terms of like my energy that I think is one of my strengths, is just having that energy. And I know, how do we move ourselves from being in a place of maybe a lower energy or things not feeling like they're going well to a place of higher energy. So I always try to say I'm an energy Sherpa. I'm just trying to help transfer that over like a little bit.
Absolutely. So when you came to LA, you wanted to be a screenwriter, and then obviously you've transitioned to personal training, like you said. What was it about personal training that made you go more in that direction?
So, I mean, both from running track to writing, they're both individual and I guess kind of more lonely experiences. Because when you write, you're not writing with a team, you're just writing by yourself. And that's the irony, is that I like people. I like working with people. I like working around people. So it was easy to want to spend more time interacting with people, getting this exchange of energy and ideas and actually seeing the fruits of your labor kind of play out in front of you. So for me, that would have been that sort of would have been the catalyst. It's just being around people, working with people, enjoying them enjoying me. Right.
So you were training for quite a long time, and then let's fast forward a little bit to when we first met.
Yeah.
12 years ago now.
Yeah, and it was funny because, so I was working with a client, and the client said, hey, listen, I've got a problem. I've been seeing a PT, and I would work with him at his house. He says, look, go and see him and learn the exercises and come back and we'll incorporate it into our programming. So I said, sure, no problem. So I said, all right, well, fine. I'm like, I'll go and see, what we're needed to do. And then I walked in, and you were working with it was a pro basketball player. I can't remember his name.
I know who you're
talking about. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. So I walked in, and you were just wrapping. You're like, hey, just gonna finish wrapping up, and we wrapped up, and you asked me some questions. What do I know about the relationship between mobility and stability? And I had no idea what you were talking about because my background was a bit more from the weightlifting, from the bodybuilding side of it. And we talked for about an hour, I remember. And I remember driving back to my clients, and I get there, and he goes, so how was it? And I said, I don't know. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I said, there was so much information coming at me that I really couldn't absorb it. And this was actually the turning point, because at that point I'd already been training for about, 10 or 12 years. And very rarely I think in this field, do you get information that literally moves you in a different direction in terms of the way that you think of your overall industry. And that was an aha moment. And at that point, I started seeing you once, maybe twice a week sometimes.
Yeah.
For the course of, I don't know how many months. It was about maybe 3-4 months. And then from then we sort of developed a friendship. And then toward the end of it, you had said, well, hey, I'm branching out on my own. I want you to come with me. Mm-hmm. And then that's how we kind of developed that relationship. And then that's how I got my exposure to my training, but not necessarily looking at it through my lens, but looking at it through the lens of, I'm not a doctor, but how you see it and how I could apply what I'm seeing, what I learned into my training, and how I can incorporate it, how to make the experience better and richer for my clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a journey, right? It's when we talk about improving our craft, or whether it's any type of continuing education kind of deal, it's number one, don't forget what's made you successful to this point. Right. And you've had a very successful history in your personal training, whether it was more isolated movements, right, or more bodybuilding, and that's good.
Right.
The other part too is I think when you learn something new, it may align with you differently, because then you start to even look at yourself.
Right.
Like, okay, what limitations do I have? Right. I've worked with this client before, and they were always complaining of this.
Right.
And I just didn't have a solution, let's say.
Right.
And I think that's the power of having a multidisciplinary team here, and obviously we have our friendship,
Right.
and it really was spawned by having those multiple contact points, spending time with each other, me learning from you and vice versa, going through movements and seeing how we could marry that with the people that we're trying to help.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
that's always been a key thing. So I think at this point in time, we're a little bit more than 9 years here at HealthFit.
Yeah, we're just over 9 years. Yeah.
How was that the last 9 years here?
It's been well. It's so when we had our I guess we had our open house about a few months back, and our team has transitioned over the years, right? And I'd have to say actually more grown than transitioned, from the sense of when we look at what you envisioned, because I was there at the beginning, like from the very beginning, what we envisioned, and I mean I remember we had 3 offices. There was your office, Kelly, right, your wife, the chiropractor, and my office is all the way back down to the other side, and we had all these other offices that were open, about at least 5, and we would look at each other like, are we ever gonna get some other people in here, other bodies in here, but over the years, watching the evolution of the idea, the vision, just sort of flourish, and having people sort of come and go in it. At different points and at different points in time, people maybe didn't see the vision, and that's like in any industry. And then you have people that kind of come in and they fit, and they have that right fit, from the front desk staff to the back office staff to, and again, not just clinicians. So watching that evolution sort of unfold, and it's very rare that you get a chance to see something from the very beginning to where it actually materializes toward the end. So it's been really a fun ride, because sometimes in our meetings I get a chance to sit back and I'm like, well, they don't know how this guy was like 8 years ago. But it's interesting. You get a chance to see it. And again, like I've said before, for me watching you, I watched you as a doctor opening a business, right? And now where we are now is I see a businessman running a business. You've evolved now, and you've gone on and you've talked to other doctors running their own places and helping them to sort of expand and what they want to do and figure out where they need to go. So that's, I think, one of the things I'm most proud of, is being able to watch you grow and watch the business grow, to see where it is right now, because it's growing. It's growing. It's one of those things where you can kind of look at as like your child, and like they've grown up, and you're really proud of where they've become. Like, but the business as a child, it's where it's actually grown into what it's become.
Yeah, I always tell that story, right? We were trying to do some mobility classes and injury prevention with our next door neighbor, club champion, and you're like, "Come on, Jay, let's go over and talk to them." Like, nah, I don't know.
And I said, let's go. We just gotta go over and talk. We just go.
Yeah, and it, obviously, I'm not the most comfortable when it comes to those things, but it's part of doing business and spreading the word, spreading the message, and I think that's one of the big pluses of having you and getting your coaching, not only just from a fitness standpoint, but just from a brother and from a mentor. That's always been important for me. Obviously, here you work with a wide variety of clients. You work with youth athletes, and you work with my mom, who's in her 80s. How has that experience been, and how does it make you feel from an achievement standpoint when you get to see someone reach their goals or whatnot?
I think using my background from before, when I was, again, coming from a weightlifting or a kind of a bodybuilding standpoint, there's the old saying, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and you can't work with an athlete and work with like your mom, her population, an older population, in the same way. And I think that's one of the drawbacks to sort of just kind of having one focus or one discipline. So it's been allowed me to grow, and it doesn't matter. So I'm seeing this particular client as an athlete, at this time, and then right after, your mom comes in, and I'm like, okay, I just changed my hats, and I'm like, okay, this is what this is what we're gonna do. It's just a different modality. There's just a different way of approaching it, and they're all rewarding. Somebody asked me, go, well, what's my my client base? Like, what the majority of my clients, who are they? And over the years, I've been trying to find a pattern, and there isn't a pattern. I've worked with kids as young as 8, and I've worked with people as old as close to 80. Mm. And it runs the gamut in between. So there's no particular area where there's one more than the other, but they're all rewarding. They're all rewarding experiences.
Whether it's current or maybe in the past, is there like a particular client where, if I were to say, like, this one was special to you?
Like in anything, you always develop relationships, and they're all special. None of them are, it's like trying to say, like, do you love one child more than another child? Just the attention can be a little bit different. But I can remember when you have people, because sometimes people we're not that different in terms of our problems. Our problems are all pretty much the same, just different variations. But it's the ones where people come in, and I think where they are very down based from where they are. And when you're able to make that connection with them, and you can see the progress, because a lot of times they can't see it when they're in the middle of it. So you're the one that tends to be more objective. You can stand back, and they're a lot more subjective because obviously they're having the experience. So as they begin to develop and grow and move through the experience, they become a little bit more objective, and they can stand back and look at themselves and be like, hey, I am making progress, right? I am doing better. And because it's not just how you might feel physically, it's how you feel emotionally, how you feel spiritually. What's the quality of your life? Do you catch yourself smiling more now than you were when you were frowning? Because I've had people come back and say, I know we're not out of the woods yet, but I feel better. I feel better, and that makes me feel better overall. Mm-hmm. So that for me, I take that as a more collective as experience as opposed to maybe just one. Because I feel like I get that almost every day.
Yeah, I think you put into good terms of, and we talk about it a lot, like the original goal of someone coming in to see you is maybe they want to lose weight or they want to get bigger muscles or whatever it is, and even from the healthcare side, the PT Chiro side, they're initially coming in for their back pain.
Right.
But I think what we do collectively as a group is we really try to find out what is our true limiting factor.
Right.
And let's say it's weight loss. What does weight loss actually give you? Is it the confidence? Is it, like you said, there's like the mental, psychosocial part, to actually go and start dating or to feel better about yourself. Right. And I think that it's important to not only focus on the things that give them the weight loss, but giving them the resources and the mental strength to target all those other things.
Right.
It's the same thing with back pain. Let's say someone is living with chronic back pain.
Right.
And yes, it's painful when they golf. It's painful when they sit for too long.
Right.
But the reality is, what it does is it affects your sleep. You can't do the things that you want to do. Right. You want to pick up your kids. You want to play with your kids. And it was funny, before I had kids, I'm working with people with back pain. It's like, I just can't lift my kids.
Right.
And not having experienced that, you're like, how hard is that?
Right.
Kids are heavy.
Right.
And they wiggle and they move, and you're giving them a bath, and you're like,
right. Imagine not being able to do that, have that experience. Imagine for yourself, take a day or two and just say, you're not going to pick your kids up, you're not going to give them a bath, you're not going to be able to do anything physical with them. And how that would impact us maybe over the course of a day or two. Now stretch that out to like weeks or months, or some people even years, not being able to have that experience anymore. And to give somebody that experience back again.
Right.
It's priceless.
It's incredible.
Right. So.
And I think that's what we focus on, obviously, as a business, and we're all individuals that do our work, and we're all, even us, we're going to have long and hard days.
Right.
And a lot of the times I think that, like you said, let's say some of the aches and pains or even emotional stress that they're feeling, we actually take upon ourselves too.
Right.
And it's really finding that balance of caring, but not taking it away from us. So it's always a challenge because that's one of the visions of the company, is to help people get back. And
knowing when to be able to, how much, because we're all giving our all. Everybody's giving their 100%. But to know, like, sometimes, like, but again, to not rob the client or the patient from the experience of learning to be able to do this on their own, to be able to, like, manage themselves. We have a lot of people, and one of the biggest takeaways that they have is that they go, I've learned so much, right? I've learned so much. I've learned so much about how I got myself into this position. I've learned how to sort of navigate and move myself out of it. Because I know I have clients that will say to me, when we first start, well, this, and this. I had this, and this. And I'm like, okay, well, did you do this, and this? And then they'll be like, no. And I'm like, so before we go into it, I want you to do this, and this. And if you've done these things and you still are experiencing something, then we can kind of visit it. And I kid you not, 7 times out of 10, they're like, I was feeling this, I did this, and I feel better, or I was able to have a better experience with whatever it is that I was doing. And I'm like, yeah. So we're providing tools. That's ultimately, like, I mean, we're helping to provide tools so that they can manage themselves and their lives better.
How would you describe your methodology now? Obviously, it's evolved over the years. Hard to say it all in one thing, but how would you describe your methodology when it comes to personal training?
So I think, coming from the background, and when we had just had a meeting about lifting, and sometimes, again, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and you tend to think that whatever you know can apply to everything else that you do. And having grown in this environment, to be able to look with some of our clinicians, yourself and other clinicians, and be like, I see the way that you can address it this way, and you can address it this way, and you can address it this way. And it's become more holistic in terms of understanding that there are different routes to take to get to, inevitably, to get to where you want to go. Whereas, again, it's not just picking up a weight and putting it back down, right? That's a very, very, I want to say, old school way of thinking. Do you need elements of resistance? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's part of what this whole makeup is. But does it have to come directly from the way that you might think that it might be? No. There are other routes, because you can run into a situation where, like I said, like I'm working with your mom, I can't deadlift your mom. I can hinge your mom. But when you learn the difference between an exercise and a movement pattern, So my methodology is really sort of expanded in understanding that you have to take a big step back and say, okay, what's going to, for this person's personality, because you're training personality as well as you're training, the actual the person's, physique or physicality. So, you're taking into their temperament, their lifestyle. What does their stress level look like? What is their dietary habits? So I'm now in a place of looking at people from a longevity standpoint. So if a lot of my clients are, in their 40s or 50s, I'm really trying to explain to them the idea of this is not just a physical appearance, right? Now we're moving beyond the way that you're moving, and what's going on in the inside. How important is it for you to get X amount of hours of sleep? And it's not, okay, 12 to 8, because that's when you can wake up at 8, but it's like, why is it so important for you to go to bed at between 9, 10, to get that, really, really good feedback of sleep in a particular time. These things are all important. Why is it important to eat this much protein? Why is it important to get this much fiber? It expands. So it's a more of a holistic approach to as my methodology. There's a lot more longevity that's involved in it. And it requires becoming more involved in their lives and understanding where they are, because we're different, not only just day to day, we're different from moment to moment. Mm-hmm. So that's how I would say my approach, if I answered that right, that's how I would say it.
No, it's great. You alluded to it. You have your lens, and you've expanded your lens, And in addition, our clinician meetings, right?
Right.
You have doctors and all these professionals together coming up with solutions. What does it mean to you to actually have access to what we have, physical therapy, chiropractic, and all these kinds of things?
I can't. It's because I've become spoiled over the last. When we first started, and it was just you and I. We got a chance to like work together all the time, and it was fascinating. And you know me, I record everything, right? And you're like, it's so annoying. But I can still go back to something that we talked about 6 or 7 years ago and look at it and be like, that makes sense. It might have taken me a while to kind of figure it out, or I look at a situation where I'm like, okay, this is what we talked about. Let me go back and I can look at this particular technique or approach and okay, this is where this is applicable. So to have this kind of, and I feel like it's a bit of a niche. I don't know if you have very many other fitness professionals that have an opportunity to work this closely with this many knowledgeable people that are willing to share. Because I mean, there are different components. One, do you have access? Two, are people actually willing? They knowledgeable enough to help move you along? And then three, is it a team environment? Is everybody willing to share all this information and then help you to integrate it into your own practice when you're working with other people?
Yeah, when we were looking, even in the vision early on, we didn't know exactly what we wanted,
right.
but we had a pretty good idea.
Right.
And I think that it's worked very well in the sense, obviously with our HealthFit system, right? We have the evaluation.
Right.
And then we get a holistic approach. We watch your movement profile. We
right.
take into consideration your history, your subjective
right.
history. Then we move on to let's get you out of pain.
Right.
Because at least let's get you out of pain.
Right.
That's why you're
right.
at least initially here.
Right.
But then we correct the underlying problem.
Right.
So if you have a knee problem, it's maybe at the hip, your ankle, sometimes even at your neck.
Right.
And we give the strategies to correct those things, correct movement patterns, get you a bit stronger. But the last piece of the puzzle was to get them stronger than ever before,
right.
or more mobile or more flexible than ever before, so
right.
we can prevent it from coming back. And for those that actually went through the system and they had success, and then they went over to you, those are the huge success stories,
right.
because that's when they truly get their life back.
It's the next step where people have asked me, like, well, you're kind of training, but you're kind of putting a different approach in it that I'm not used to, and I guess ultimately for me, it's like, we're like little breadcrumbs. We're doing breadcrumbs along the way, and ultimately what we want is, and I guess for me philosophically, if I had to think about it, to make everybody more robust, right? Because no matter what you think, life's going to come at you, and we can't, there's some aspects of things we can't change, and we just have to be able to go along with it, whether that's from a physical standpoint, whether that's from a mental aspect, whether it's emotional or it's spiritual. So all we can do is make ourselves in all of these areas, and particularly physically too, more robust, so we can manage all of these different things that are going to be coming at us. So yeah, absolutely. We're looking at integrating everything that we're doing together.
All right. So now to your personal interests. Obviously, we're talking about work a lot. What kinds of things do you like to do outside of here?
If you talk to anybody, if they were to ask, describe Allister with, what he's passionate about, the first thing they'd probably tell you is fantasy football.
You do? You had a trophy the other. Didn't they put your name on a trophy?
Yeah. There's one of our old clients, and you always have the name on the trophy when you win it. And I love fantasy football. I mean, and we've got a bunch of the clinicians in here that do it and they play, and some of the back office staff, and we're always talking about football, and we'll be in passing, like, hey, should I pick up so and so or so and so? What do you think about this team coming up, bro? And I'm like, oh, you got to get this person. You got to get this guy in there. So yeah, during football season, my passion is would definitely be fantasy football. I'm a big reader. Like I like to look at as much material as possible. Whether I agree with it or not is kind of really just being exposed. I think becomes more the idea. So I'm a big reader. I collect hats. I have a lot of hats.
Yes, you do.
I have no, you have no idea. I have you never seen. I have roughly. I think I've got about 150 hats. About 150. Yeah.
Where do you store your hats?
That's a good question. I'm always running on a storage space. So currently, most of my hats are being contained in a container and in the garage. So yeah, hats and shoes.
How many hats does Katie allow you to have in the house?
About 3. After that, it just becomes ridiculous. It's just like it's 3. And so yeah, the garage and the shed are where I keep most of my hats and my shoes.
Yeah. Hey, if you found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification for our latest tips coming to you every week. Share this video with your family and friends. It might just make their day a little bit better. I'll see you soon.